The desert stretched far and wide, the air shimmering with heat and the sun burning down on the endless rocks. No human had ever expected to stand here in the heart of alien territory, where every grain of sand seemed soaked with old battles. Yet here he was, a lone human surrounded by watchful eyes, knowing one wrong move could end his life. The tribes of this world were proud, ruthless, and unyielding. They lived by duel, honor, and scars carved into skin. To them, weakness meant death, and mercy was nothing more than a forgotten word. The crowd gathered in a wide circle, their voices low and sharp, their armor clinking as they waited. In the center stood she, the warrior they all called their blade daughter. Tall, fierce, and strikingly beautiful, she carried herself like the desert's own spirit, wild and untamed. Her eyes were sharp like daggers, painted with streaks of dark ink across her cheeks, marks of her victories. Long black hair framed her face, and in her hand she held a curved blade that caught the sunlight like fire. The people adored her, feared her, and no warrior dared to challenge her. Until the human arrived, he had not come to fight. That was the strange part. He had come searching for a lost path, for answers buried in the desert ruins, and instead he was dragged before them, accused of trespassing where no outsider should ever step. His words of peace were drowned by laughter. To them, his kind was soft, fragile, untested. He was nothing but a distraction until the warrior herself stepped forward. With a smile like steel, she raised her weapon and spoke in her tongue, a challenge no one could deny. The people roared their approval. The duel was law, and the human, standing alone, understood he had no choice. If he refused, he would be executed as a coward. If he accepted, he would face her in combat, and the chance of survival was slim. Yet something in his heart, something older than fear, made him nod. He accepted. The sand grew silent. The circle tightened. Her eyes locked with his, expecting him to tremble, to falter. She had seen fear many times before, but this human's gaze was steady. Not brave, not foolish, something else. A calmness she did not understand. She tilted her head, then spun her blade in her hand, preparing for the strike that would end this quickly. He took a step forward. His arm lifted slowly as if in surrender, but then the sunlight hit his skin, and the fabric of his shirt slipped against the wind. That was when it appeared. Bold, black, alive. A tattoo burned into his flesh, stretching across his shoulder, alive with strange lines and symbols that seemed to pulse faintly with energy. The design was not like any mark of her people. It was ancient, unfamiliar, yet powerful. It carried weight. It carried fear. The warrior froze, her blade hung mid-air. The fierce smile faded. Her chest rose sharply as her breath caught. Around them, the crowd muttered and shifted, their voices carrying confusion and unease. None of them understood the mark, but the way their champion hesitated was enough to unsettle them. They had never seen her falter before. Not once. He did not notice at first. To him, the tattoo was simply a memory of Earth, ink carved during a time when he needed strength. But here, in this desert, in this circle of death, the mark was more than art. It was something older, something tied to the bones of the world they stood on. He could feel their eyes burning into him, not with mockery now, but with something heavier, something close to fear. She lowered her blade an inch. Her lips parted, whispering words that only he partly caught. It sounded like a name, but not his. A name forgotten, a word carried by the wind of old legends. Her people shifted, uneasy, watching her in disbelief. She, their undefeated blade daughter, was hesitating before a human dot. The silence stretched longer, thicker, more dangerous than any battle cry. He stood there, his arm still raised, his breath slow, his heart pounding. The tattoo seemed to glow faintly in the desert light, as if alive. He did not know why. He did not know how. But at that moment, he felt the entire desert holding its breath with him, and so did she. Asterisk. The silence in the desert circle became unbearable. The people shifted, their voices growing louder in confused murmurs, but none dared to step into the ring. Their champion, their blade daughter, was frozen in place with her weapon hanging loose in her hand. She stared at the human's tattoo as if she were looking at something long buried in nightmares or legends. The human finally lowered his arm, puzzled by the change in her. He was ready to fight if he had to, ready to use whatever tricks and courage he could summon. But this was something else. The mark on his shoulder was only ink to him, a symbol from his own past back on Earth. Yet here, under alien eyes, it carried a power he did not understand. You cannot bear that mark, she whispered, her voice low, almost broken. He frowned, hearing the fear in her tone. The crowd leaned forward. The warrior was not supposed to sound like that. She was supposed to sound fearless, sharp, unbreakable. Instead, she looked at him as if the ground itself had betrayed her. "What does it mean to you?" he asked, careful with his words. The blade daughter shook her head, stepping back as if to create distance. For a heartbeat, her grip loosened on her weapon. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Never had she given ground to anyone before. One of the elders shouted from the circle. His voice was harsh, filled with command. "Fight him. Cut him down. Do not shame us." She did not move. Her eyes remained locked on the human's tattoo. The lines of ink, simple and bold, seemed to pulse in the heat. She recognized the shape, though she wished she did not. It was the mark of the fallen flame, a sign from their oldest tales. Her people believed those who bore it could never be defeated in open combat. More than that, they were cursed to bring ruin to those who struck them. But how could a human and outsider carry such a mark? The human felt the weight of the silence. He could sense the shift in the crowd's mood, from bloodlust to unease. He understood that something far beyond his knowledge was happening. And deep inside, he knew that fear could be as powerful as any weapon. "I don't want this duel," he said finally, his voice calm but firm. "I came here with no blade, no shield. I came searching, not to destroy." His words carried through the circle. Some of the aliens scoffed, others muttered angrily, but there was doubt in their eyes now. If their champion would not strike, what did it mean? The blade daughter's jaw tightened. She raised her weapon once more, but her hands trembled slightly. She could not allow weakness. To falter now would mean her people lost faith in her. Yet the mark burned into her sight, refusing to let her strike. The human took a step closer, not with aggression, but with steady purpose. The desert wind swept between them, carrying dust and heat. "If you fear the mark," he said softly, "then tell me why. What do you see in it?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to spit at him, to cut him down and end the whispers. But her heart pounded too hard. Memories of old songs, old warnings passed through her mind. She remembered her grandmother whispering of the cursed warriors with black fire etched into their flesh. Warriors who shattered armies not with strength, but with the weight of prophecy. Finally, she growled under her breath, "That mark does not belong to your kind. And yet, there it is. If I strike you, I strike against the flame itself." The crowd erupted into chaos. Elders barked orders, warriors shouted in disbelief. Some called for his death, others demanded explanation. The humans stood silently, letting their storm of voices swirl around him, and then, slowly, the warrior lowered her blade all the way. The steel tip touched the sand. The people gasped again, louder this time. She had yielded not in defeat, but in refusal. The elder who had shouted before stepped forward, fury blazing in his eyes. "You dishonor us. He is nothing. A human trespasser. Cut him down or face exile." Her gaze hardened, though her voice shook. "No, I will not strike him." The elder raised his hand, signaling other warriors to enter the ring. Swords were drawn, spears lifted. The human's chest tightened. Whatever mercy he had been shown by her hesitation might not save him now. Yet in that moment, the Blade Daughter stepped in front of him, her stance firm. She raised her blade again, not against him, but against her own people. "You will not touch him," she said. "Not while I stand." The circle fell into stunned silence again. The desert itself seemed to wait, holding its breath. The human looked at her back, at the strange warrior who just minutes ago wanted to cut him down, now standing between him and death. He did not understand why, but he knew everything had changed. The desert wind howled across the circle, carrying the weight of silence that no one dared break. The human stood behind the warrior, still stunned by her decision. He had expected her blade to pierce him, not shield him. The alien crowd shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between her and the elders, the eldest among them, a man with skin like carved stone and eyes glowing faintly with desert fire, stepped forward. His staff struck the sand with a dull thud. "You disgrace your blood," he growled at her. "You dare protect him?" The Blade Daughter tightened her grip on her sword, lifting it higher. "I will not strike him. The mark he carries is not mine to challenge." The elder spat, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Old tales. Dust and whispers. You hide behind superstition like a coward." He turned his eyes on the human. You bring curses into our land. You will die here, with or without her blade." The crowd roared its approval at his words. Warriors pressed closer to the circle, their weapons flashing under the desert sun. The human's heart pounded. He had no weapon, no allies, nothing but the tattoo that had frozen their champion. Even she, as strong as she seemed, could not fight an entire tribe. Still, she stepped forward and shouted, "If he dies by your hands, his blood will curse us all." The voices faltered for a moment. Even the most hardened warriors shifted uneasily at her warning. She had power among them. Her victories had earned her respect, and though they hated her hesitation, they feared the curse more. The elder slammed his staff again. "Then prove it. If his mark is flame-born, then let the flame show itself. Otherwise he dies, and so do you for protecting him." The crowd erupted again, chanting, demanding. The warrior lowered her gaze. She had not expected the elders to call her bluff. Her heart raced as she looked back at the human. His eyes met hers, calm yet filled with questions. "I don't understand," he whispered. "What are they seeing in me?" Her lips pressed tight. Then she leaned closer. "Your tattoo. It bears the shape of the fallen flame. It should not exist in your kind, yet here it is. They believe it is cursed, a mark of doom." He glanced at the ink on his shoulder, dark against his skin. To him, it was a memory of home, carved during a hard time of his life, nothing more. But here, it had become something far larger. He clenched his fists. "Then we have to make them believe it." The elder raised his arm, signaling for the warriors to advance. Spears lowered, shields lifted. The circle of death tightened around them. The human felt his throat dry. But then something happened. The sun broke through a cluster of desert clouds, and the light struck his tattoo again. This time, it did not simply glow faintly. It burned. Lines of heat shimmered across his skin, faint but undeniable, as if fire slept inside the ink. The warriors halted, their steps faltering. The crowd gasped as one. The elder froze mid-command, his mouth half open. His eyes widened. The Blade Daughter's own heart skipped a beat. She could feel the heat radiating faintly from him, though the air around was hot already. Her chest tightened with both fear and awe. She whispered under her breath, "The flame lives." The human looked down in shock. He felt the warmth too, strange and alive, pulsing with his heartbeat. He didn't know how or why, but in that instant he understood he could not back away. He lifted his arm high, showing the tattoo to all. the crowd staggered back as one. Some dropped their weapons, others bowed their heads in instinctive fear. The chanting stopped. The desert fell silent once more. The elder's staff shook in his hand. His voice came out hoarse, weaker than before. It cannot be the mark. The prophecy. The warrior turned toward her people, her blade still raised. Her voice rang out over the desert. You see it now. The flame does not belong to us alone. It has chosen him. The people muttered in disbelief, but none dared step closer. Fear and uncertainty had replaced their anger. The elder stumbled back, his authority cracking under the weight of what they had just witnessed. The human lowered his arms slowly. His chest heaved with heavy breaths. He did not understand the fire, nor the prophecy they spoke of, but he knew one thing for certain: he was not safe yet. Fear was a shield for now, but fear could also turn to rage if the elders twisted it. The Blade Daughter looked at him, her eyes filled with something new, not just shock, but respect. And perhaps a dangerous thought she did not want to name. You carry a power you do not understand, she said quietly. And now the desert itself will move against you. They will never let you walk free. The human nodded grimly. Then I guess we'll have to walk together. Her lips curved slightly, a ghost of a smile, but her eyes were sharp. Around them, the crowd remained hushed, every warrior holding back, waiting for someone else to make the first move. The desert silence felt heavy, as though the world itself had shifted. The duel was over. But the true battle had just begun. The desert crowd slowly broke apart, whispers echoing like restless winds. No one dared to strike the human now. His tattoo had burned before their eyes, and though they tried to deny it, the sight had carved fear deep into their hearts. Some bowed their heads. Others looked away, but all kept their distance. The human lowered his arm, trying to hide the mark beneath his torn shirt again. Sweat rolled down his neck, though the heat he felt was not only from the sun. Something inside the tattoo pulsed faintly, like a living ember refusing to die. He clenched his jaw. He had never believed in curses or prophecies, yet here he stood in the center of one. The Blade Daughter kept her stance strong, her sword still raised toward her people. Her sharp gaze swept across them, daring any to move. But her heart was heavy. She had never defied her elders before, and now every step forward placed her outside the law. At last, the eldest struck his staff against the ground. The sharp crack silenced the whispers. His voice trembled with barely restrained rage. The mark means nothing. Tricks of light, nothing more. You let a trespasser mock us. This human will not leave alive. The people murmured uncertainly, their eyes darting between the elder and the warrior. They had seen the flame. They had felt the heat. But fear of the elders weighed just as heavily as fear of curses. The warrior's voice cut through their doubt. I saw it. You all saw it. The flame chose him. Strike him now and you risk bringing its wrath upon us all. The elder glared at her. You dare challenge my word, child? Have you forgotten who gave you your blade? You will kneel before the council, or be cast out as traitor. She straightened, her chin high. Then cast me out. I will not kill him. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Warriors who once admired her now stared in disbelief. To choose exile was to choose death in the desert. Yet she spoke with no hesitation. The elder's face darkened, his jaw tight. He waved his staff, signaling his guards. Take them both. Lock them until judgment is passed. Before the guards could step forward, the human moved closer to the warrior. His voice was low but steady. If they take us, they'll kill us. We can't stay here. Her grip tightened on her sword. She knew he was right. The council would never allow the prophecy to live, not if it meant losing control of their people. The only way forward was escape, even if it meant turning her back on everything she had ever known. Follow me, she whispered, with sudden speed. She spun her blade, striking the spear of the nearest guard. The clash rang out, scattering sparks across the sand. The guard stumbled back, unprepared for her rebellion. The crowd erupted into chaos. Warriors shouted, some rushing forward, others retreating in confusion. The elder's staff slammed the ground again, but his voice was drowned out by the noise. The blade daughter grabbed the human's arm. "Move!" They broke through the circle, sand kicking up beneath their feet. The human stumbled at first, unused to running in the desert, but adrenaline pushed him onward. The crowd parted reluctantly, none daring to strike the man marked by flame. Still, a few bold warriors gave chase. Their weapons gleaming. The chase carried them past the edge of the circle, through narrow rock paths carved by centuries of wind. The sun dipped lower, shadows growing longer as they fled. The human's lungs burned, but he forced himself forward. The warrior led with sharp movements, her blade flashing whenever an enemy drew too close. At last, they stumbled into the cover of a canyon wall. The warrior pressed her back against the stone, panting. The human leaned beside her, clutching his chest. "They'll never stop," he said, his voice rough. She nodded grimly. "Not while you carry the mark. To them, you are a threat that must be erased. And I am a traitor for protecting you." The human met her eyes. For the first time, he saw the weight she carried, not just as a fighter, but as someone torn between duty and something far greater. "Why did you choose this?" he asked softly. "You could have killed me and kept your honor. Why risk everything?" Her gaze lingered on him, intense and unreadable. "Because the flame chose you. And if it has chosen you, then perhaps my destiny is tied to yours." The human had no answer. He only knew her words stirred something deep inside him, something both terrifying and hopeful. Above them, the sound of voices echoed through the canyon. The elder's guards had not given up. Their shadows stretched across the rock, hunting, relentless. The warrior tightened her grip on her sword and looked to the human. "If you want to live, you must trust me. From here on, the desert will test us both. And only the flame knows if we will survive." The human nodded slowly. His chest still heaved with exhaustion, but there was no turning back now. Whatever the tattoo meant, whatever the prophecy truly was, he was caught in it. And she had bound herself to it as well. Together, they stepped deeper into the canyon. Shadows swallowing them as the hunt closed in. The canyon stretched endlessly, twisting like the ribs of a giant buried in the sand. Shadows stretched long as the sun sank lower, and every step echoed like a drumbeat that warned their pursuers. The human's legs burned from the climb and the run, but he forced himself to keep up with the warrior who moved with practiced grace across stone and dust. Behind them, the sound of shouts and clashing weapons rang out. The guards were coming. Their voices carried through the canyon walls, bouncing off the stone in echoes that made it impossible to know how close they were. The blade daughter paused at a ledge and pulled the human up after her. Her hand was rough and calloused, but steady, like iron wrapped in flesh. "Keep moving," she whispered. "If we stop, they'll surround us." The human nodded, his breath ragged. "Where are you taking us?" "To the old ruins," she said, her voice low. "If your mark is truly flame-born, the ruins may answer it." He frowned but didn't argue. He had no better plan. All he knew was that her people wanted him dead, and she was the only one keeping him alive. The canyon grew tighter as they moved, until the walls pressed close enough to touch both sides with outstretched arms. The air grew cooler in the shade, but heavy with silence. The human felt the weight of every step, as though the rocks themselves were watching. Then came the sound of stones scraping. From behind, a warrior leapt into view, spear raised. His armor glinted in the dim light as he roared and charged. The blade daughter spun, her sword flashing. The clash rang out sharp and hard, sparks scattering in the narrow pass. The human stumbled back, watching as steel met steel. The warrior's strikes were heavy, but she moved like water, parrying and twisting. With a sharp cry, she struck his spear aside and drove her blade into his chest. The enemy fell, but his cry had already alerted the others. More voices rang out, closer now. The human's heart pounded. He looked at his arm, at the tattoo hidden beneath his sleeve. It still pulsed faintly with warmth, as though urging him. He lifted his hand against the stone wall without thinking, and the ink flared. The rock trembled. Dust fell in streams, and faint glowing lines spread across the canyon wall like veins of fire. The Blade Daughter turned, her eyes wide. "What did you do?" She gasped. I don't know," he stammered. "I just touched it." The glow spread further, and with a deep groan, part of the canyon wall shifted. Stones cracked, falling away to reveal a narrow hidden passage cloaked in shadow. The warrior stared at him, then at the mark. Her voice dropped into a whisper filled with awe and fear. "The ruins. They recognize you." Shouts grew louder from behind. Warriors poured into the canyon, their spears glinting in the dying light. Without hesitation, she grabbed his arm and pulled him through the hidden passage. The opening sealed behind them with a grinding of stone. Plunging them into darkness, the human stumbled forward, his breath coming fast. The air inside was cool, almost damp compared to the dry desert. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls, the same shapes and lines etched into his tattoo. He raised his arm, and the marks on the wall pulsed brighter in response. The Blade Daughter stood close beside him, her eyes fixed on the glowing ink. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Only our oldest ancestors knew the paths of the ruins. No one has opened them in centuries. And yet," her gaze slid to his, "you did it without knowing." He shook his head. "I don't understand any of this. Back on Earth, this tattoo was just a choice. A reminder to myself. It was never magic. And perhaps it was never only ink," she said softly. "Perhaps the flame chose you long before you stepped into this desert." The passage opened into a vast chamber, carved deep into the stone. Pillars rose like giants, and at the center lay a circle etched with glowing lines. The human stepped closer, the tattoo on his arm burning hotter. The glow on the floor responded, alive and waiting. The Blade Daughter's voice was low, reverent. "This place. It is said to hold the memory of the first flame. If the ruins accept you, then you are bound to it. And bound to our fate." Before he could answer, a crash echoed behind them. The wall had been broken open. Warriors poured into the chamber, their eyes blazing with hatred and fear. The elder himself stepped forward, his staff glowing with unnatural light. His voice boomed across the ruins. "You are no chosen flame. You are a liar, a thief of marks. And I will end this deception." The human stood frozen, the glowing circle beneath his feet pulsing faster. The heat from his tattoo surged like fire in his blood. He felt his knees shake, his chest tighten. Yet within the fear, there was also strength raw, dangerous strength. The Blade Daughter stepped beside him, her sword raised, her voice fierce. "If you strike him, Elder, then you strike against the ruins themselves." The Elder sneered. "Then so be it." He raised his staff high, power building in its crystal tip. The chamber trembled as warriors closed in. The human's hand clenched, fire burning in his veins, and the ruins waited for his choice. Asterisk. The chamber trembled under the Elder's power, dust raining from the ancient ceiling. His staff glowed with a fierce, unnatural light, casting sharp shadows across the carved stone. Around him, his warriors circled like wolves, their eyes fixed on the human. None of them saw a man anymore. They saw a threat, a curse that could unravel their world. The human stood in the center of the glowing circle, his breath sharp, his body trembling. The tattoo burned hotter than fire, pulsing with his heartbeat, the light spilling across his skin. He clenched his fists, his jaw tight. He did not understand the ruins nor the prophecy. But he understood one thing clearly: if he faltered now, both he and the warrior would die. Beside him, the Blade Daughter held her ground, her sword steady though her chest heaved with breath. Her eyes never left the elder. "If you strike him," she said, her voice steady and sharp, "then you bring the flame's judgment on us all. Even you cannot control it." The elder snarled, his voice rising above the trembling air. "I am the keeper of law. The flame bows to no outsider, and neither do I. This trespass ends now." He thrust his staff forward. A beam of light shot across the chamber, crackling with force. The human threw up his arm in instinct, and the tattoo exploded with fire. The beam shattered against it, scattering sparks like shattered glass. A wave of heat rushed outward, knocking warriors to the ground. The chamber's carvings blazed alive, every line glowing like rivers of molten gold. The human staggered, but the fire inside him roared, refusing to let him fall. The crowd cried out in shock. Some shielded their faces, others dropped to their knees. The elder staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. The human lowered his arm slowly, his breath ragged. Flames licked faintly across his tattoo before fading into a steady glow. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber. "I didn't come here to fight you. But if you force me, I will." The warrior's eyes shone with fierce pride. She stepped forward and raised her sword. "He carries the flame. He carries what none of us dared to touch. You would strike him? Then you strike against destiny itself." The people murmured, torn between loyalty and fear. The elder's power wavered. Rage twisted his face. "You are fools. The flame is death. It will consume us all." He raised his staff again, desperation tightening his grip. But before he could strike, the human stepped forward into the circle's center. The ruins flared brighter, and heat rolled outward like a storm. "Maybe you're right," the human said, his voice steady though his chest thundered with fear. "Maybe the flame is dangerous. But it's not meant to destroy, it's meant to choose. And it chose me." The staff shook in the elder's hands. His voice cracked as he screamed, "Then it will die with you." He swung the staff downward, but the human moved first. His fist clenched, the tattoo blazing like a sun. Fire surged from his arm, not wild, but controlled, spiraling into the air. It struck the staff with a deafening crack. The crystal shattered, exploding into shards of burning light. The elder was thrown back, collapsing against the stone floor, his body writhing before falling still. The chamber grew quiet. Warriors froze where they stood, eyes wide. The glow of the ruins dimmed slowly until only the tattoo still shone faintly, pulsing with life. The human stood trembling, his chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face. He had not meant to kill the elder, but the fire had left him no choice. He looked down at his arm, the ink glowing softly, and for the first time he did not see it as just a memory. It was something far greater, bound to this world as much as to him. The Blade Daughter lowered her sword, her gaze fixed on him. Slowly, she knelt on one knee before him, pressing her blade tip to the ground. Her voice was quiet, but strong. "The flame has chosen, and I will follow it." The people hesitated, but then one by one, they too knelt. Warriors bowed their heads, their weapons lowered. The chamber filled with silence, broken only by the sound of the desert wind through cracks in the stone. The human stared in disbelief. He had come here with nothing but his own will to survive, and now an entire people bowed before him. He did not feel like a king, nor a god, just a man caught in something greater than himself. He looked at the warrior. She lifted her head, her eyes fierce and clear. "You are no longer a trespasser. You are the bearer of flame. Our future is bound to yours." He swallowed hard, uncertain of the weight pressed on his shoulders. But when he saw the faith in her eyes, the strength in her stance. He felt something stir inside him. Perhaps the flame had not chosen him by mistake. For the first time since the duel began, he allowed himself a small, steady smile. Then we faced that future together. The chamber glowed faintly once more, as though the ruins themselves approved. Outside, the desert waited, endless and unforgiving. But he no longer faced it alone.